Hello everybody, thank you for joining me. So the day's finally arrived, the release of George Harrison All Things Must Pass 50th Anniversary Remix, even though it is a year too late. I've been following this every step of the way, as I am going to do soon, hopefully with Beatles Get Back / Let It Be releases, so stick around if you want to see those. But I did a video a few days ago where I showed the 5 CD Blu-ray Deluxe box, and I certainly... the main takeaway from that was it's a very nice box, but I didn't think that the value for money was specifically there. I've now had a chance to listen to all of that, and I'm going to do my review. Before I start that, I have just had the Splatter Vinyl delivered in the post, so I wanted to show you that. It comes in a box similar to how George Harrison All Things Must Pass albums tend to come. Nice box there, 50th anniversary on the side, and it actually sort of, it's not a lid that comes off, it opens up like that. I've taken all the contents out, I'm going to show you those in a second. But with that Splatter Vinyl you get a book, 12-inch vinyl sized book. It's not a hardback book like you get with the 8LP set, and it's fairly brief. It's much more brief than the book that you get in the 5 CD box, so I would say that actually the book in there is much more comprehensive than what you get in here. But just to give you an example, it's got, you know, it's got some photos in there. It's nice enough. There is also a giant poster, the same poster that you get in all the releases. There's an idea of how big that is. Nice poster of George. I wonder if that could end up on my wall, potentially. But this Splatter Vinyl, let me just show you this before I get onto my review of the music. There you go. All three look exactly the same. Both first 2 discs are the main album remix, and the 3rd disc is the Apple Jams remastered, not remixed, because of the way it was recorded originally they couldn't remix it. But all 3 of those come in a polylined sleeve, but there is also included a separate sort of replica sleeve for each of the discs, if you want to keep it in those, if that's your preference. So that is the Splatter Vinyl. That's nice. I'm going to enjoy playing that. But yes, I'm going to move on to my review of the music. So the 5 discs, I've listened to all 5 CDs. I've been through quite a lot of it a couple of times as well. I've also listened to the Blu-ray so that I can pick out any differences with the high-res mix. I've made notes because there's a lot to take in. So I'm going to be sort of going through my notes that I've made. So I played the new remix, and what I've decided to do is I know this is kind of first impressions, but a bit of a score, you know, how do I think each song compares with the remix to the original mix, and I'll give a point sort of depending on which I think's best, and we'll see sort of how that comes out at the end. I know how it comes out at the end because I've already scored it, and I was a little bit surprised by the results. So let's see how we got on. So we start off the album with I'd Have You Anytime. And, you know, with this remix, what we've all been sort of wanting to know is how much could this album be sort of allowed to breathe and be sort of freed from the shackles of its Phil Spector mixing, wall of sound kind of thing. And some people are excited to hear that, some people don't want it messed with, I understand that. But for the start, for I'd Have You Anytime, there wasn't anything dramatic here. I found it was kind of just like a cleaned up version. There's no big revelations here, but I thought this was a good start for the remix. I thought the song was allowed to breathe, and I'm going to give that to the remix as a win there on the first song. My Sweet Lord. Now this is a dramatic departure, I think, from what we all know as My Sweet Lord. George's vocal it's up front, it's exposed, there's not much reverb there at all, and it almost makes it feel a bit like a kind of a guide vocal on an earlier take that's been stripped back. I think a lot of epicness has been lost from the song on the My Sweet Lord remix. The instruments sound really nice, but it just, you know, My Sweet Lord is an epic song, and I don't quite get the feeling that this is on this version. I would go so far as to say I am not a fan of the remix of My Sweet Lord. it's 1-1. It's a point to the original mix there. Wow Wow next to one of the big walls of sound on the album. It's a much more cleaned up vocal. The backing vocals have got so much more prominence. The first time that you hear the backing vocals of Wow Wow come in, it's like boom, it's in your face, and it's got like a kind of a wah guitar pedal effect as well. The drums, I've always felt like it's always sounded to me like there's sort of 10 duvets sat on top of the drums, and you know, it's a muffled sound that comes out. It now feels like there's only one duvet on top of the drums to me. So the drums are still a bit muffled, but not as much as they were before. But again, I think a little bit of the kind of epicness of the song is lost a little bit here. So I'm giving a point to the original mix for that one. Isn't it a pity? This to me is the best remix so far on the album. Sort of what, 4 songs in. George's vocal is high in the mix again, but it really benefits the song this time. I think it sort of it really helps it to move along. The bass sounds big, but I mean that in a good way. It doesn't feel boomy to me. It just really sort of shows off. It feels like I've got a subwoofer that I didn't pay for, but I do mean that in a genuinely good way. And I think Isn't It a Pity sounds really good. I'm giving a point to the remix there. So it's 2-2. Excuse me, folks. I'm still not set up properly in this room, and I haven't got a chair at this end, so I'm kind of on my knees to get level. I'm down on the floor when my knees start to hurt. So bear with me here. Right? That was Isn't It a Pity. Next up, we've got What Is Life. Now the intro, the da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, that sounds gorgeous. The way that the guitar and the bass together, it sounds fantastic on this remix. There's still some blankets on those drums to an extent, and it felt like it was lacking a little high-end EQ to me. I would have liked a little bit more treble in the mix, but there was lovely subtle strings in the background. But overall, although it sounds really nice, I think overall I prefer the original mix. So it's a point to the original mix. Now, we get to the point of the album that traditionally has never been my favourite. So If Not For You and Behind That Locked Door, it's kind of where I think it's generally not up to the standard of the rest of the album. But on this remix, changing my opinion. If Not For You sounds really good. Now, appropriately, of course, it was a Bob Dylan song. That it was on his New Morning album around a similar time to George. But appropriately here, it feels much more like a Bob Dylan backing track and a Bob Dylan song now than I've ever really noticed before. And what I'm sort of kind of feeling at this point is that the quieter songs, so for example, Isn't It a Pity and I'd Have You Anytime and If Not For You, they're the ones that are benefiting most, I find, from this remix. I probably haven't enjoyed If Not For You as much ever as I have on this remix. I think it sounds fantastic, and it's a definite point to the remix there. Next, Behind That Locked Door. Now, again, it's a quieter song. It's one that's never really been a massive favourite of mine. George's vocal is exposed again. It's high in the mix, but that fragility, I think it suits the song. The backing vocals sound beautiful. And again, I found I was enjoying that song more than I ever really have done before. There's a gorgeous Hammond organ break sort of during the instrumental break, and I really, really like this remix of Behind That Locked Door. So that is a point to the remix. Let It Down next. It's got a big intro, obviously, as Let It Down, and I felt that full-on intro just lacked a bit of something. When the song settles down and George starts singing, I thought it sounded really good again. So again, it's the quieter sections of the album that I think work best on this remix. But overall, I prefer the original mix of Let It Down. So it's 4-4. Run of the Mill. It sounds like it wants to be great, but it's just, you know, on the CDs, there's definitely like quite a low dynamic range on this. You've not got the mastering is sort of quite limited. Would I go as far as to say it's like a brick walled mastering? I don't know, but it really I noticed it on here that the song wanted to saw, but it felt it was just being squashed in the dynamics a bit. Now, I did play the Blu-ray last night and it wasn't as noticeable, so I think the Blu-ray, the high-res version, sounded better than the CD version here. But again, I'm going with the original mix overall on this one. Beware of Darkness, gorgeous song. It's another dry, reverb-free George vocal. It suits the song, but again, I would like a bit more dynamics on the instrument. It just sort of all felt a bit squashed in the mix. But again, the Blu-ray wasn't as noticeable on that. So if you've got the option of playing high-res and benefiting from that mix, I think you may well like that. I'm going to be playing this Splatter Vinyl soon, and I expect that to have a bit more room as well than the CD for the dynamics to shine through. The guitar picking in the left-hand channel sounds fantastic on this song. I'm giving that to the remix as a win. Apple Scruff's next, one of my favourite songs on the album. Excellent, wasn't too in your face. Like there's some of the masterings of this album in the past where it's been a bit full on as this. This isn't. This sounds really nice. There's a real good balance between the acoustic guitar and the harmonica. There's nothing revelatory here. There's nothing that's been brought out that you've never heard before. It's just a really nice balanced mix and sounds great. I'm giving a point there to the remix, which goes into the lead. Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. Now this got me when it started. So at the beginning there's a little guitar riff that I've always heard on the original mastering as diddle-doo, diddle-doo, but on this one it's like diddle-diddle-doo, diddle-diddle-doo, if that makes sense. So I'm having to get used to that. I went back to the original mix and had a listen, and it's there, but it's a lot less noticeable. So there's some nice treble on the drums here that wasn't as noticeable in other songs, so that was good. And this backing vocal, which runs sort of through certain parts of the song, where it's "Oh, Sir Frankie Crisp," it's so much more noticeable on this remix. They've really brought it out, but I like that. And again, I went back to the original mix, and I hear it a little bit more in that now because I know exactly where it is and I hear it more prominently. But I thought that this was one of the highlights so far. I just need to get over that extra little note in the guitar riff that I'm not used to noticing. But I really like the remix here, and I'm giving it a point. Awaiting on You All next, one of the big production wall of sound numbers on the album. It's a drier vocal again, so there's not so much reverb on the vocal, but the backing, the instrumentation, it's still the biggest Spectre wall of sound so far on the album. There's not really much else to say about this song other than it's kind of what you know already, but with less reverb on the vocal. But I kind of prefer the original mix overall. So we've got a score of 6 to the original mix and 7 to the remix. It's doing well. All Things Must Pass next, the title track. I really, really like this one. We've known it for quite a while now because it was the first one to come up on YouTube several months ago. But it's the strings sound. You can tell it sounds like Abbey Road on the strings. It's as gorgeous as every other version of the song that we've had. There's a little acoustic break, just 2 or 3 seconds long near the end of the song. That sounds fantastic here. The way they've cleaned that up, it reminded me of Lovely Rita on the Sgt. Pepper 2017 remix. The intro to that, where they cleaned that guitar intro up and it sounded so much more real than we'd ever heard it before. It reminded me of that here. But I really love the remix of the title track, so I'm giving a point to that. I Dig Love now, the intro I thought sounded fantastic. The bass is prominent, but again I felt that was in a good way. This might be the most clarity that we've had on the album so far of anything. I don't think this song's ever been a particular highlight of the album, but it sounds really fresh and clear here to me. And right through to the end of this song, I thought this was a great remix. So I think we're kind of finding as we move through the album, the remix is sort of starting for me to be really great versions of the songs, and I'm giving the point to the remix there. Art of Dying next, bass drum intro. Again, it feels like I've gained a free subwoofer, but it sounds really good. It's been cleaned up and the sound given a lot more clarity than before. And the song almost felt to me like it's got a bit of a Savoy truffle feel. There's certain things on the album. The White Album has been in my mind when I've been thinking about some of this stuff, as we'll see as we go through a little bit further on. But yeah, this sort of felt like Savoy truffle to me. We've then got version 2 of Isn't It a Pity, which I've never understood the point of it being on the album at all. I think the first version is far better, but this version here on this remix seems to make more sense to me. It feels like it's worthy of its place on the album to me now for the first time. George's vocal is prominent, there's no reverb on it again. The backing vocals sound lovely, and it feels, yeah, much more worthy of its place on the album. But there's a very strange moment in this. It's about 2 minutes 20 seconds in. If you want to listen to it, because if it's one of those things that once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. There's a bit where the keyboards come back in after a little break, and it's out of sync with the rest of the song, quite badly so. I can only assume that that's a mistake rather than being deliberate, and if it is a mistake, what a careless mistake. But it's definitely out of time with the rest of the song. Strange. But for the fact that it just sounds so much better to me than the original mix, I'm giving a point there to the remix. Last song on the album now, Hear Me Lord. I am going to cover the bonus discs, by the way, so don't disappear after we've got to the end of the album. Massive White Album vibes to me, again on this particular song now that they've cleaned it up, and they really have cleaned it up. It sounds nice, and I really like it, but again I felt it lost a little bit of the epicness of the original song. So for that reason only, I'm giving a point to the original. But I do like the remix, certainly. So yeah, so I probably didn't expect the remix to fare this well in the sort of points battle between it and the original mixes, but it really has done. But despite that, if I'm thinking about which is the version that I'm going to listen to most overall in over the coming years, I think it's likely to be the original mix. I think as an album it hangs together a lot more. And again, I was reminded of the White Album here, because with the White Album remix back in 2018, I felt that there was a case to be argued that almost every song on that remix is probably the best you've ever heard it. It sounds fantastic. But bring it all together as one sort of cohesive listening piece, I don't like the remix as much. It doesn't take me to a dark place like the White Album should. And I felt a little bit similar here, that while individually the songs have clearly won that battle, I think as an album it probably still works a little bit better on the original mix. That was how I felt anyway after a few listens. So, and I also felt as well, and I mean this in a good way, that I felt like, you know, with the John Lennon boxes that we've been getting over the last couple of years, and you've got these raw studio mixes where it sort of really feels like you're in the control room with John. I thought similar here with some of the clarity of George's vocal. It almost felt like I was listening to a raw studio mix, and I mean that in a good way. So I do certainly like the remix. There's a lot to like on here. My biggest sort of minus point on the remix, without doubt, is My Sweet Lord. I just don't think it cuts the mustard compared to the original. I really don't. So that's the main album. On to the Apple Jams now. This, like I say, because of the way that it was recorded originally, this is a remaster, not a remix. But I mean, I don't listen to the Apple Jams often, but I felt out of the blue, I thought sounded great here. That was a really fun listen, and it was quite similar to listening to some of the like the Plastic Ono band sessions that where you've got John, Ringo, and Klaus sort of doing sort of some really dirty rock and roll on the Yoko sessions. It was almost like that. So I really enjoyed that. On to the outtakes and demos disc. Disc 3, so this is called Day 1 Demos. This is possibly the highlight of the set. It is a fantastic stripped back versions of songs from the album, and other songs as well, like Dera Doon that we saw in Beatles Anthology. Real nice version of that. And if you've got disc 3, you are going to love that. I think that was really great. Disc 4, now there's a song on there called Everybody Nobody. Now that would eventually transition into the Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. You can hear definitely the origins of the Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp in that song. And there's a few other things on this disc that I was less familiar with. So a few songs would be Window, Window, Tell Me What's Happened to You, Nowhere to Go, which has got an interesting lyric where he talks about I get tired of being Beatle Jeff, or Beatle Ted in another verse. Mother Divine and I Don't Want to Do It. They were songs that I didn't really know at all before. Disc 4 I think's got a little bit more of a downbeat, sombre feel than Disc 3. That will certainly appeal to some fans, because I know Somber George has certainly got his fans, but Disc 3 for me was the one. Disc 5, various album outtakes. The take ones were the most interesting for me to sort of see how the song was right at the start. Wah Wah, for example, take 1. All the guitar riffs are there, almost identical to the final version. They just kind of refined the song from that point, but it was all absolutely there. If Not For You, take 2, I felt was even more Bob Dylan-esque than what made it onto the final album. It just sounds like you sat in a 1966 or 67 Bob Dylan session. It sounded really good. I loved that. Run of the Mill, take 36. That was very jolly, very different mood to the final version. I'm glad he changed it though. It was a bit too jolly, I think, for me. There's then some non-album jams. There's one called Down to the River, which is like a cross of, it's 12-bar blues with some yodeling included. Why not? It's not something I intend to listen to often, isn't that? But yeah, it was interesting. There's then a run through of Get Back for probably a couple of minutes. A lot of an instrumental run through, but with a bit of singing. It sounded as though it was maybe been played as a bit of a warm-up at the start of the day, something like that, just to get people ready and in the groove. We've then got one called Almost 12-Bar Honky Tonk. Now, if you know the Beatles 12-bar original from Anthology 2, this is kind of that, but 5 years on, and it goes on and on for about 7 minutes, and it was just a reminder to me of why 12-bar blues jams are barely even interesting for the people who are playing them. And God knows I've played in bands where I've done enough of them over the years. Bad enough to be in a room with playing, just couldn't hold my attention at all to listen to it. But maybe that's just me. If you're a fan of the blues, then maybe you're going to love that. But to me, it was 12-bar original 5 years later. It's Johnny's birthday. Now, presumably what we've got here is the version that makes it onto the main Apple Jams, but at its normal speed, not the speeded up version. And that was nice to hear, so I quite enjoyed that. That was a fun minute. And then at the end you've got Woman Don't Cry For Me, take 5 of what would end up on 33 and a third eventually, but in an acoustic slide guitar form. So there's a lot of fun to go through there on those demos, outtakes, jams, etc. I think I'll spend a lot of time with this box set. I still stand by my original point that I think it's overpriced. I think in UK money, I think around sort of £70 to £75 would be fair price for a box of that size. But yeah, really enjoying it. I mean, it's taken a long time for us to get this. A lot of us probably wondered if it was ever going to happen, but really glad it's here. I of course would like to know your thoughts on the remix as well, and the jams and everything like that. And I hope to do a listening party on this soon, so I hope very much that a lot of you will join me for that. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I will see you again very soon. Goodbye.